Welcome to Season 2 with the Market Mystics, where we discuss and redefine markets, wealth, and trading on Earth as it is in heaven. Join us on the journey while we consider new possibilities with special guests who might just challenge a few perspectives. Get ready to dive in deep with your hosts, Joshua and Kim.
Hey everybody, welcome back. We have a super exciting topic today. I don't know what it is. Josh just said hit record in the middle of a conversation, so here we go.
Well, you sort of know what it is because we were in the middle of a conversation. And I was just like, that's a great thing. We should talk about it. So what we were talking about was the other night, Kim texted me, was it Friday something? And you were like, hey, are you okay? I'm feeling this anxiety, this feeling a weight. Feeling something. And it doesn't feel like something I'm dealing with. And I was like, oh, like in the moment, I was like, no, I'm not. And so we started texting some of the other people we're connected with, people we do business with, and be like, hey, are you feeling this? Are you going through anything? Are we picking up on something you are? And first of all, I would just like to talk about just the fact that that's a thing. Like, it's something that Kim and I and her sister and some people in our community have experienced for a while now, where it's like the people who you are connected with, sometimes you pick up on their stuff, and being able to discern what's yours and what's not yours is really important.
It is really important.
And so I just I would love to just have a little conversation to start, and then I have somewhere I want to go with it of what was that like the first time that you the first time you remember experiencing like that, or even just this week, like what went through your mind when you were differentiating, oh, I feel this way, and then all of a sudden this isn't something I'm experiencing.
Sure. I have no idea when the first time was that I ever felt something like this, but I think it is so closely related to the quantum entanglement stuff that we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
It is like being at the most basic level connected to others and tuned in. We talked about a radio and kind of just tuned into that stuff. If you have your dial turned there, you'll pick up things sometimes, right? So I don't know when the first time was, but I will tell you on Friday, it was like, this is the day that happened. It was last Friday. It was like all day, just something felt a little bit off. First of all, I'm not a person who deals with much anxiety within myself. Mm-hmm. I'm blessed in that way. But I was kind of feeling some of that. Like you can feel it in your chest. You can kind of feel it in the pit of your stomach. Kind of like in your brain a little bit, like things just they don't quite feel right. And I was feeling this all day long, and I just kept thinking, man, what is going on? Like, I don't know what's wrong. I haven't had anything happen. I don't feel like there's some doom coming or something, but I just feel off a bit. And it just didn't feel like it was mine. Like I was processing it. I was seeking the Lord, all those things, and it didn't feel like it was mine. And I'd gone all day like this, and finally I started messaging. I was like, maybe it's somebody else. Like it's got to be somebody in the circle. Like I don't know. And so that's why I reached out. But I felt like this. I've had years and years, probably a good 2 decades of things like this happening. It always tends to be with people who I'm close with, like I'm in active community and relationship with, just because that's who I'm dialed into. What about you? Because when I asked you this question, you said, I have been feeling this a little bit, but I didn't feel like mine either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I think, like you said, it took a minute to process, like, this like what's going on. This doesn't feel like me. It's when I saw your message, I was like, oh yeah, like, I have dealt with some anxiety and things like that. And so I think my first instinct is just to be like, oh yeah, like my body's processing something. And then when you sent that, I was like, wait, yeah, like this isn't me. And so it just like connected at that moment for me. I was like, yeah, and it wasn't intense. I wasn't like, I was sitting on the couch. I think I was watching My Octopus Teacher or something like that, which is an amazing show. Maybe sometime Kim and I will talk about that. But I think it was just you asking the question that made me be like, oh wait, this isn't me. And so one of the first people that popped into my mind was one of the people we worked with. And I knew that at that weekend that they were going through they were meeting with multiple different people for big projects that are going on. And I was like, maybe there's something there. And that's sort of what spurred the second half of where I wanted to go with this, was because that person responded and said, yeah, no, like everything went relatively good. I'm feeling fine. And so it wasn't like they were like, oh yeah, I'm super stressed about this. Like you're picking up on that. Like it wasn't like that. And so I told Kim, and this is where I told her to record, I was like, maybe we're just picking up on the energy of what's happening there. Um, and so recently I was listening to a person talking about trading foreign exchange, trading Forex. And they made the comment that when multiple percentage moves happen in Forex, that means that billions of dollars are flowing from one place to another place. To make a percentage move in Forex it takes a significant amount of money to do that. And so they were talking about how when they first really got into that they would randomly feel little bursts of what they called anxiety, like just this little burst of energy that didn't feel normal. And they didn't put it together. In fact, they thought that they were picking up on other people around them stuff. And so they were calling their mentors and their friends and their family and saying, hey, like I just got this little twinge. And they even made the comment like, it was so fleeting that if I wasn't tuned into myself, I wouldn't have even probably processed that it was anxiety. And so it was fascinating to me, because then they started to put together that in those moments when they would feel that, Forex would start to move. And so they eventually showed them that what they were doing was picking up on the energy of those billions of dollars flowing through something they were connected to. And so when today, when we were processing this, those two stories clicked in my mind and was like, what if it wasn't a specific person? What if it is the energy on these things that we're connected to that then we're feeling? Because we're so used to, in our ministry background, tying it to a person. But what if it's a piece of the business that we're tied to and we've just not seen it like that before?
I mean, it would make sense. I also feel very immature. Just truly, because this is what I'm processing as you're saying this. Here are these things that I'm connected to. I've received blueprints on them. I've received direction on them. It's like very much tied to part of my destiny. I've seen this from the Lord. I know this. And yet, when there is a change in the flow around me connected to that, I look everywhere else. And how it's humbling. It just makes me feel very immature in learning or knowing how to operate in that, I would say, piece of my destiny. You know what I mean? And for whatever reason, imagining it like it's a breeze that blows by with a certain like essence or scent. You know what I mean? You know how like if you're in a rose garden and the breeze blows, you'll smell the roses because you're there. So whether your eyes are closed or not, you'll know you're there. But it's like I'm smelling roses when it's really Chinese food or something. I don't know. I'm not recognizing it. You know what I mean? Like just because there's a breeze doesn't mean it has to be this. But I feel like I need to hone in on learning the different, I don't know what you would call it, frequencies, or I could say essence again, or just the different nuances of the different things that I'm connected to. Did I just get way too existential? That's just what's going on in my brain.
I think that's a good question because it's part of just learning to tune in, learning to pay attention. Like that's an important piece of the puzzle. Learning to know what is what. And I think that's a piece of maturing is learning that distinction. I mean, maybe at first it's like you have no idea, but can you then learn to look for patterns? Like, I think that's the most important thing. Like, when do you feel that? Like, what's going on when you feel that? Like the story I told about the person trading, it took them a little while to figure out that something was happening when that was happening. Like, it took them a little while to find that pattern. We talk all the time about being a mystic and the importance of like recognizing patterns, even in trading in life. But like, when you're feeling this, what's going on at the same time?
Right. I was just thinking, this will be very telling of the generation I'm from. But when I was a kid, there was no caller ID. And when you answer the phone, you learn voices and you know who they are based on what their voice sounds like without being told. They don't have to say, oh, yeah, this is Billy from across the street or whatever. You know, because you know their voice. And now, number one, I am a true millennial and I don't like to answer the phone. But number two, if I do, I'm far less tuned into the sound of the voice than I am to what the caller ID says. It's like, it's kind of cheating, and I've not been exercising that muscle of like listening to those different frequencies and the different nuances and the accents and the tone of the voice and knowing that this is who it is without having my phone pop up and say, oh, it's Billy from across the street.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of really amazing things that technology has automated and taken off of our plate, but maybe that intuition piece or not, I mean, maybe to some extent intuition, but some extent just like learning details. There's a lot of details we don't have to pay attention to anymore.
Right. Exercising that muscle. Do you know when I was a kid, I knew everybody's phone number by heart? I know maybe like 5 people's phone numbers now. And one of them is Papa John's because they like has a very specific pattern.
That's amazing. Yeah, I know very few people's phone number.
Right. Okay, but tying it back, it's like I haven't been exercising that muscle to recognize those small little differences. And this is exactly what we're talking about. So here's his flow of energy that breezes by. And I don't recognize where it's from because I haven't been exercising the muscle that pays attention to distinction. I'm expecting a big banner to fly in front of me. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Man, that's really good.
It's an interesting thing. I don't know. I would say this to our listeners. Go back and listen to the quantum entanglement episode,
right.
And then compare it with this, and then let us know what you think.
Yeah.
I just think there's so much. We just keep going back to it recently. Don't you think? Like this analogy of the radio and tuning in, right? And being on a certain wavelength and recognizing the things that are flowing past you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so vital to learn to do that well. To learn to be able to adjust the knob on the radio.
It's true. It's true. I will say, years ago when I first started kind of picking up on some of those, this is somebody else's energy that's happening, right? There were times when I would know who it is because I somehow recognize it. There's no way I could make it tangible. There's no way I could tell you right now logically what it was, but I recognize that was flowing past me. But again, I think that I've allowed myself to be out of practice with it, and just like something's blowing by. I can either pick up on it or I cannot.
Yeah.
But do I need to do anything with it? But sometimes you do.
Well, you know how they say like 80% of communication is nonverbal. Like when you're with someone, you're picking up on their eye movement, you're picking up on their body language. I think probably there's an aspect that you're intuitively picking up, like without any physical thing. And I think kind of what we're talking about is the remnant of that piece of communication. That person's still communicating. And if we're paying attention to that frequency, all of a sudden we feel it, we hear it.
I think it's so true. I think about Josh and I travel a lot together. We do a lot of ministry together. We do a lot of business stuff together. And we have had a lot of traveling. And it's interesting because we don't live in the same city now. We're not physically around each other often at all, pretty much when we travel.
Right. It's true.
And but when we do travel, it's an interesting thing because I can pick up on his energy. We're sitting in the same room. We could just be in the same building. And it's a learned thing, but it is like you're both in the same stream. There's this same flow, and you can tell when that other person has moved or there's a blip or something.
Right.
But I don't always recognize it so easily from afar, which is why I'm like, well, Josh, is this you? The other day, right? I'm like, is this you I'm picking up on? Is this somebody else? But I'm also not so tuned into like the unique, I don't know, flow of everybody around me. I just know that they're around me.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. And I think, we've talked before about awareness being the first step to everything. So I think holding this awareness that this is a thing and I am picking up on somebody else's something, like that's enough to start the conversation, the internal conversation of, well, who is it? Like, what frequency is this? What is going on?
Yep. Totally agree. Cool. Well,
good stuff.
Sometimes these episodes where we have no idea where we're going, I enjoy the journey.
I hope our listeners do.
I hope our listeners enjoy it too. This is so much of what our community and our relationship is actually like. Here's our friendship on a platter for you guys. We talk about things and we go on a journey together.
That's right. And it's fun.
So glad you're here to join us.
Sounds good. Thank you guys for being here.
Yep. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for sticking around. Listen for new episodes every Monday and Thursday. Find us on all social media platforms by searching for Market Mystics. Don't forget to follow and subscribe. Visit upperroomcd.com where you can find more information about the hosts, projects, and guests. Go deeper by booking a coaching appointment focused on redefining identity and wealth in your life. See you next time.